Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going deep on how research methods need to change, especially for international business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area. Lots of potential for new ideas, and this paper dives right into all that.
The paper we're looking at today has a really long title, almost as long as some of those research studies they're talking about. It's from the Journal of World Business, and it's called Reconsidering, Refashioning, and Reconceptualizing Research Methodology in International Business.
Catchy, right.
But don't worry, we're going to unpack it all. Basically, the idea is if we want to understand global business, we need to change how we do research.
Exactly. So imagine you're a company trying to expand into a new market, right?
Okay.
You've got the market data, financials look great, but then your product launch is a total flop.
Oh, no.
Why? You didn't get the culture, those unspoken rules.
Right, the stuff you can't really measure with numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where this idea of using ethnography comes in.
I'll admit, it sounds kind of academic.
It does. But think of it like this. Instead of just focusing on numbers, researchers using ethnography really immerse themselves in the culture.
So they're not just crunching data, they're actually out there experiencing things firsthand.
Yes, they're observing, participating. They basically become cultural detectives.
I like that, cultural detectives.
The authors call this thick description. So it's not just describing what you see, it's about figuring out the meaning behind people's actions and beliefs.
Okay, so, give us an example of thick description in action.
Okay, think about a handshake. Simple, right?
Yeah, everyone knows what a handshake is.
But the meaning can be totally different in different cultures.
Oh, right, like how firm you grip or how long you hold it.
Exactly. And who starts the handshake, all those things tell you something about power dynamics and social norms. And if you miss those little details, it could cause a lot of problems in business.
Misunderstandings, missed deals, even big, costly mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And negotiation styles, that's another great example.
Okay, how so?
Well, if you were just looking at numbers, you might just look at, how often people interrupt or how many concessions they make.
But that doesn't tell the whole story.
Right. Ethnography would look deeper. Maybe in one culture, silence is a sign of respect.
Interesting.
But in another culture, silence means you're weak or not interested.
Wow, so the same behavior could mean totally different things.
Exactly. And, ethnographic insights, they can be really valuable, for understanding consumers, different leadership styles, organizational cultures, even ethical decisions.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for different cultures.
Right. And this paper, it doesn't stop there. They also talk about using something called multilevel modeling.
MLM. That sounds a little intimidating.
It might sound complex, but it's a pretty straightforward idea. Basically, it recognizes that things in international business are all connected.
Okay.
So you have individuals within teams, teams within companies, companies within countries, right? Each level affects the others.
Kind of like those Russian nesting dolls.
Precisely. MLM helps you see how all these different levels interact.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you're studying employee motivation. Maybe you find that a certain leadership style works well overall.
Okay.
But with MLM, you might discover that style is actually much less effective in subsidiaries in countries with high power distance cultures.
Because employees there expect more direction from their bosses.
Exactly. So MLM helps you understand not just what's happening, but why, how different factors at different levels all contribute to the big picture.
So you could be making decisions based on incomplete data if you're not using MLM.
Exactly. And, the authors also talk about how we need to change how we judge research quality, especially qualitative research.
Right, like ethnography.
Yeah. They say that for too long, we've been using the same standards as quantitative research. Too much emphasis on generalizability.
So can we apply the findings broadly to other situations?
Exactly. But with qualitative research, generalizability is often about building deeper understanding, not just repeating findings in a large sample.
So instead of asking, will this always be true? We should be asking, what does this teach us about how things work in this specific context?
Yeah. And then how can we apply that understanding to other similar situations?
It's like learning from the best practices of a really successful company.
Right. You might not be able to copy everything exactly, but you can take valuable lessons and apply them to your own situation.
So it's about moving away from this one-size-fits-all approach to research.
Yeah, and accepting that different methods are good for different research questions.
This is all really interesting, and I'm definitely curious to hear more about how technology is shaking things up in the research world.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we really got into this paper, You might have pictured research as like, I don't know, a lone genius hunched over their data, but what if research was more like a symphony orchestra?
Symphony.
I'm intrigued. Yeah, with all these different experts playing their part. That's the idea behind crowdsourcing, which is this really cool concept the authors bring up. It's all about making research more reliable.
Okay, so I'm imagining a room full of researchers, all looking at the same data, maybe arguing about statistics.
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that, but yeah, the core idea is tapping into the collective brain power of multiple researchers.
So, more brains are better.
In a way, yes. Because think about it, even with the same data, the same research question, different researchers are going to make choices. Like how they clean the data,
Yeah.
which variables to focus on.
Right, and even with the best intentions, those choices could affect the results, right?
Exactly. So instead of just relying on one person's interpretation, you get multiple perspectives on the same data.
Okay, so it's like a built-in reality check.
Exactly. And it's not just about different perspectives. It's also about recognizing that there's always going to be some subjectivity in research. There have been experiments where highly trained researchers working with the exact same data reach different conclusions.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes even opposite conclusions.
Huh. Well, that's a bit unsettling. If different people can look at the same data and get such different results, how can we trust research at all?
It's not about undermining trust. It's about acknowledging the complexity of research. It's about being more transparent, more robust in our approach.
Okay, so by having multiple people analyze the data, we can see how those individual choices affect the results.
Precisely. It forces us to be more careful, more critical in our thinking.
So it's like a checks and balances system for research.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there might not be one single right answer. And that's where this idea of multiverse analysis comes in.
Multiverse analysis. Now that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It's not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, instead of trying to find the one true answer, multiverse analysis encourages us to explore a whole range of possible interpretations.
Oh, okay. So we're not trying to eliminate variation, we're embracing it.
Exactly. It's about understanding how different analytical choices can lead to different conclusions.
So it's like, I don't know, there are many paths up a mountain, and each one gives you a different view along the way.
Perfect analogy. And by exploring all those different paths, we get a much richer understanding. In research, this means being open about our methods, documenting our choices, making it possible for others to check our work.
So it's all about making research more transparent, more reliable.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the role of technology. We talked about machine learning earlier.
Yeah, machine learning, it's such a buzzword these days. But I'll be honest, I'm still not quite sure what it actually is or how it's being used in research.
So imagine you're trying to understand what consumers want in a global market. You could spend months doing surveys, focus groups, or you could use machine learning to analyze millions of social media posts, online reviews, all that stuff, much faster.
So instead of asking people what they think, we're analyzing what they're already saying online.
Exactly. Machine learning can spot patterns and trends in massive amounts of data that we could never find manually.
It's like having a superpowered research assistant.
Right. But of course, there are risks too.
Oh yeah, like what?
Like any powerful tool, we have to use machine learning responsibly, ethically. That means making sure the algorithms are fair, unbiased, and we can't just blindly accept the results.
Right, we still need to use our own judgment.
Exactly. Technology is a tool. It's the human minds behind it that are driving the innovation, asking the right questions, interpreting the data.
And speaking of human minds, I'm eager to hear what the authors have to say about a new business model for research. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So we've talked about all these limitations with traditional research methods and these really cool new approaches. But the authors, they don't just point out the problems. They actually offer some solutions, like a whole new business model for research.
Yeah, they're basically saying we need to rethink the whole system. You know, how research gets done, what gets rewarded.
Okay, so like what's wrong with the current system?
Well, think about how academia works. It's all about publishing in the best journals, getting grants. It's very individualistic.
Publish or perish,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. And that kind of pressure, it can lead to researchers prioritizing quantity over quality.
So rushing to publish lots of papers, even if the findings aren't that solid.
Yeah, and chasing after those flashy results that might not hold up over time.
Right, and maybe avoiding riskier, more innovative research.
Exactly. And the authors are arguing that this traditional model, it's not working anymore, especially in a world that's so complex, so interconnected.
So what's the alternative? What does this new business model look like?
Well, it's about moving away from that competitive, individualistic mindset towards something more collaborative, more open.
More about working together, sharing ideas.
Exactly, like embracing open science,
Yeah.
where you share your data, your methods, so others can check your work, build on it.
That sounds like a big change for academia
It is a huge shift, but I think there's definitely a growing movement in that direction.
because people are realizing the old way just isn't sustainable.
Yeah. We need to move away from focusing on individual success and think more about how research can benefit society.
So instead of adding another publication to your resume, you're thinking about how your work can make a real difference in the world.
Exactly. It's about asking, how can this research inform decisions, solve real problems? How can it help create a better future?
And this all ties back to what we were talking about before, right?
Yeah. The crowdsourcing, the multiverse analysis,
Yeah.
making research more transparent, more robust.
Building a research ecosystem that's more open, collaborative, accountable.
Exactly. And recognizing that knowledge isn't created in a vacuum, it's a shared effort. We all benefit when research is done rigorously, openly, and focused on solving real problems.
It's really inspiring to think about research being used in that way as a force for positive change.
It is. And it's not just about academics working on their own. This new model really encourages collaboration between researchers, practitioners, policymakers, the people affected by global business.
Breaking down those silos, working together to find solutions.
Exactly. So, what does all this mean for someone listening to this deep dive?
Yeah, what can I actually take away from all of this?
I think it's about being a more informed, more critical consumer of information. When you see those research findings, don't just take them at face value.
Right, do your own digging.
Yeah, ask questions about the methods they used, think about potential biases, look for different perspectives.
Remember that research is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the future of research in international business.
Thanks for joining us.